With Jurgen Klopp's blockbuster announcement, will Liverpool sign a midfielder before the deadline day? That is the main priority for Liverpool, and that's our main talking point on The Room, the podcast brought to you by LFC Transfer Room. Hello, everybody, and I'm Richie. I'm one of your co-hosts today. I'm joined alongside Alex and Rigo. Today, it's a bit of a special edition, really, because the countdown to the transfer deadline is upon us, and there's so much that we can talk about transfer-related, which is quite nice, because after the Darwin Núñez deal, it looked like our business was done. We're going to get straight into it. We'll actually go straight into the transfer roundup and then get on with the rest of the show. We have analysed 3 of the main figures that Liverpool seem to be targeting, or that rumours are seem to be targeting to stick with us. We're going to go through the roundup. Those mentioned on the roundup are not actually analysed as well. So stick with us. Here we go. Frenkie de Jong is expected to get his wish and stay at Barcelona this summer. Liverpool are looking elsewhere for someone else, and that's from Ben Jacobs. Transfer guru Fabrizio Romano has also weighed in and stated, "So far, I have no news on Frenkie de Jong and Liverpool. There is no negotiation in process as things stand. Liverpool's salary structure also means this is not an easy deal. So let's see if the player changes his mind. But my feeling is that Chelsea are the team who are really pushing for him." Jude Bellingham is Real Madrid and Liverpool's first priority next summer. Jan Fjortov has said that the relationship between Jurgen Klopp and Dortmund will be a small advantage for the Reds. With rumours surrounding Liverpool and in particular Jurgen Klopp's interest, the Liverpool Echo have denied that Sheffield United's Sander Berge is not a target for the Reds in this transfer window. It was reported by the Yorkshire Post earlier today on a Sunday that Liverpool had joined the race to sign Berge, with the 24-year-old having a 35 million release clause, but that seems to be a non-starter there. And James Pearce weighed in too, and he gave his insight on who Liverpool will sign in midfield and said, lots of speculation and names being bandied around, but nothing concrete at this stage. All eyes on midfield, absolutely 100% from that transfer roundup. We're not going to get any reaction from Alex and Rigo. We normally do. We normally have a little bit of a discussion based around it, but actually, I want to delve straight in. On Friday night, around 10 p.m, Jurgen Klopp dropped a cataclysmic pipe bomb during his press conference against Bournemouth. Klopp confessed how he made a mistake. That's very rare that Jurgen admits that, insisting his side did in fact require a new midfield recruit. He said, "I know we have had this discussion since it all started, and I am the one who said we don't need a midfielder, and you were all right and I was wrong. That's the situation. But the specific point doesn't change. We need to do something, but it has to be the right one. We are looking for it. And if the right player is there, we will obviously take him. And if the wrong player is there that we don't need, then we won't take him." So that set the Twitter sphere just blown wide open. I don't think any of us slept till at least gone midnight, in the UK there when that broke 2 hours later. And obviously, the Twitter universe was completely awash with rumours. We mentioned the Frenkie de Jong when it looks unlikely. We've mentioned Sander Berge. I think we had Yuri Tillemans pushed in there too. But those aren't particularly, that they've not been strongly linked. So instead, Alex, Rigo and myself have had a look at some potential midfield targets and how they would fit in to the Liverpool system. I'm going to go over straight away to Alex, who's going to introduce our Liverpool target, and then followed on by Rigo and followed on by me. And again, this analysis, we have spent quite a while doing this, and hopefully it's useful for all of our listeners out there. And this is basically not who we want. This is basically who Liverpool have been linked to, who's realistic, and what can they bring to this Liverpool side. Over to you, Alex.
Right, so my one is a report from Kicker claiming that Liverpool are exploring the availability of signing Conrad Laimer for RB Leipzig, and with his contract in the final year, a price of 25 million euros pounds even, will be enough to get it done. I initially weren't too keen on any links to Conrad Laimer, but after doing this research, I now think he would be the perfect sign for Liverpool. Firstly, because of how cheap he is due to his contract, but a lot of things surprised me about him, to be honest. So, first of all, his availability: 43 appearances last season, and all in versatile positions. He's played centre mid, defensive midfield and right mid, so he can plug gaps, and he can do that consistently throughout the course of a whole season. He got 5 goals and 6 assists, so it's good goal involvements as well, which obviously a lot of people desire in a midfielder if we are going to sign one. I think when the rumours come out about maybe more defensive midfielder, people don't like it as much as maybe somebody who can get forward and chip in with a goal. And he's a previous Salzburg player, and you touched upon this last week, Richie. These Salzburg and Leipzig players, we've got good relations with the club and that franchise, so that could go a long way into getting the deal done before deadline day. His attacking numbers, 87 percentile for non-penalty goals and 91 percentile for non-penalty XG. So he's a great goal threat, and he's in the 95 percentile for assists. So I initially had a perception that he weren't going to be a good goal threat, and I was extremely surprised realising that he really is. Combined non-penalty XG for goals and assists is at a 93% percentile. So again, he's showing that he can be the attacking threat that a lot of people desire. In terms of his playmaking and his all-round game, 86 percentile for dribbles complete, 86 percentile for progressive carries, and he does that at 6.13 per 90. So again, this is good progressive numbers. A player who can get the ball and he can drive. You'd expect a player like that to maybe play at the 8 either side, depending if Elliott's starting or whatnot. The one for me though, 95 percentile for crosses into the area, and as soon as I saw that, I thought Darwin Núñez would have an absolute field day if we were to sign this player. Combine that with someone like Trent and Andy Robertson's crosses, there's going to be a lot of deadly crosses into the area for a poacher like Núñez or Jota to get on the end of. Defensive numbers as well. I think you were saying it the other day, Rigo, in the group chat, for example, some players don't look too good defensively, and in Klopp's workman-like midfield, they've got to be able to go back and forth. 99 percentile for pressures. That is a joke and suits Klopp down to an absolute T. 85 percentile for tackles, 1.84 blocks per 90. Again, these are just some numbers of how he can do it, both back and forth up the pitch. To me, the stats are suggesting that he's a cheap alternative to someone like Jude Bellingham. Be able to do it both ends, and he's got a great goal threat about him. Possibly at that price as well, you could see us signing someone and then still having money going forward. Not too much out the bank to maybe look at signing a player of a higher caliber in regards to a transfer fee. But I honestly think this Conrad Laimer he'd be a match made in heaven, and at such a low price, I think it's a no-brainer. I think it's the one Liverpool should go for.
You said the rumoured price was 25 million, is that right?
Yeah, that's spot on.
Yeah, I mean that's a drop in the ocean right now, isn't it? For a decent midfielder for 1 year left on his contract, it looks like it's either 25 million now or 3 in the summer. Rumours were at the start of the summer that Bayern, I think, were circling, like sharks around him. Maybe they're waiting until the summer, so Liverpool probably have to strike now too. But I mean, like you said, he's an animal. He's an absolute monster of a presser. And that fits Liverpool down to an absolute T. He's industrial, like he's workman-like. He just seems like a very, very good fit, and there's no wonder that there are links around him. What wage do you think? Because we have to factor in, these sort of things, because that is what FSG, that is what Liverpool base their structure around. What sort of wage would he command, do you think, as a rough estimate?
You've got to compensate to the fact that the Bundesliga isn't, the money in the Premier League is obviously very different to the Bundesliga. That's why fees are cheaper. And if you're not a team like Bayern Munich, even Dortmund, you don't really, the wages aren't, astronomical. I honestly think you could bring him in around 80 to 100,000 a week, maybe even cheaper, because obviously the Red Bull franchise, they're a wealthy one of that, but the Bundesliga just doesn't have the same money that the Premier League does. So I think the wages wouldn't really be an issue. So I'd say 80 to 100,000 a week,
which again is not too much, considering what Liverpool have paid players in the past, or what Liverpool are currently paying players now as well. It's something certainly that fits the profile, it seems, amongst everything. And this is why perhaps we don't focus on the Frankie de Jongs of the world, because that wage structure, like Fabrizio alluded to, it doesn't quite fit the Liverpool way, that wage structure. Unless, of course, Frankie's going to take a massive pay cut, but he does seem set at Barcelona or Chelsea. Thank you so much, Alex. That was a really good in-depth analysis of Conrad Laimer. You've got one absolute follower there. I would love to see Laimer in a Liverpool shirt. I think that, that his age profile, even for 25 million, he's only going to get better under a Jurgen Klopp team. And even if he's not going to be a stopgap, but he could be, for the next 3 or 4 years, sold on a profit. And that, again, factored in, that's how FSG work. Over to you, Rigo. Who was your pick and how do they fit into this Liverpool team?
Thank you, Richie. And definitely good shout out there, Alex, as far as Laimer. I concur with both your opinions as far as his fit. And just to add a little background, he's currently earning 48,000 euros a week over at Red Bull Leipzig. So definitely we can afford to hike that up for him over at Liverpool.
I'm shaking my head like I'm disappointed for him. Like I'm shaking my head like, oh, is that it? He deserves way more than that. I'm thinking it's 48,000 pounds a week. So yeah, but in context of the footballing world, that's not a lot.
That's nothing at all. And he's still only 25 years old. He'll be 26 next year. So fits right into the age structure as well. So, moving on to my prospective target, that would be Moises Caicedo. While the track record is short as far as what we've seen from him, the potential is long on this player. He's only 20 years old. He'll be 21 in November. And as far as counting stats for him, while certainly he doesn't have the numbers that someone's track record as Conrad Laimer does, in his brief history with Brighton, he's come across 12 games in the Premier League, started all 4 this season already, played a full 90 in each. And across those competitions, all his numbers that stick out to me the most would be his dribbles completed, falling into the 75th percentile across the top 5 leagues in midfielder, as well as his tackles, which would be in the 71st percentile, which I think is definitely needed from any target that we bring in. Considering if we have Elliott in the midfield, we need someone who is able to track back and fill in those defensive challenges, and especially with Trent also creeping up there, I think Moises Caicedo would be a great fire extinguisher to go along with Fabinho in that midfield. He's great at blocks, clearances, as well as aerials won. Once again, pretty short track record. He only has 1 goal and 1 assist in the Premier League, but that's definitely a player with long potential that we can, obviously train him up into the Liverpool way and spring every little bit of potential out of his career. And as far as price, I think it would command at around 30 to 35 million pounds to get him away from Brighton. They're not strapped for cash at this point from the Cucurella deal, so I don't think there's quite a desperation to sell players. The thing that kind of sparked this rumor for Caicedo was reports out of Ecuador, considering that the player would like a move to Liverpool. Man United has been bandied about as a potential target for him, but I think those rumors have died down. They had their chance at signing him and foregone that, so I don't think he'd want to go there. So hopefully the rumors turn out to be true, that we get a player of Caicedo's potential or a player of Laimer's track record into the Liverpool midfield. I'm interested to hear what your midfield target is, Richie.
I'll get onto it in 2 seconds. But with Caicedo, does it worry that he has quite a small selection of data for Brighton? Obviously, he's not featured too much yet. I think he was in their under 23s and 21s last season with some appearances. I mean, I've seen him several times this season, and he does look like an absolute player. I think he would slot into our Liverpool midfield as well as, as anybody. But does it think that it might be too soon to move to Liverpool? Do you think that actually, no, this player can just come in and make our starting 11?
What we've seen so far is that players have been moving around for astronomical transfer fees, even just a little bit of a track record. And having seen him in the Premier League, he certainly looks the type to be able not just to build on his current displays, but even grow even further into his potential. Him starting all 4 matches for Graham Potter is a selling point for me already. Potter's not going to put anyone out there that isn't going to fit the bill. He's a manager that's up and coming. Bearded Potter is the best Potter. I hope he never gets rid of that beard, because since then, Brighton have been a thorn on every top 6's side and the Premier League side in general. So I think I think we should capitalize on while his potential transfer fee is low, and he's definitely somebody for the now and the future, because considering he's starting right now for a Premier League side of the caliber of Brighton, I think he could definitely slot in for us.
Yeah, Brighton have been absolutely like a joy to watch. I think they've been probably the biggest surprise package so far of the Premier League. I know we're only 4 games deep, but they've been so impressive. And Graham Potter and Brighton have played beautiful football for many years actually now. I think they've just lacked a goal scorer to finish everything off. And I think if they get a goal scorer, they're 100%, going places under Potter. So Moises Caicedo, again, heavily linked. And what's interesting is that it came from the Ecuadorian reporters, like Rigo said. And that's exactly what happened with Nunes. That's exactly the same thing that happened with Luis Diaz. Local reporters don't necessarily get briefed, because there's no point for Liverpool to brief the local reporters, because then it drives up prices and hype. Whereas a lot of reliable sources actually now come from elsewhere. So if Ecuadorian, journalists are reporting it, there might very well be some weight to it as well. So Moises Caicedo is Arrigo's analysed choice. And again, another great prospect. Mine is a little bit closer to home. And it's probably no surprise to everybody that it comes in the form of Ruben Neves. Now, Neves has been linked to this 25-year-old for a number of years, and particularly after the departure of Gini Wijnaldum to PSG last summer. And it was actually the Mirror that pointed out that the Portuguese international has a long-standing relationship with Klopp's assistant, Pep Lijnders, who, again, worked with him in the Porto Academy, and he made a massive impact. I mean, Lijnders has gone on to say, I know him very well. His ambition, his passion for the game, but his professionalism. I know what he gives to the team, and this is the type of player who always interests us, as in Liverpool. I recognised him when I saw him at Wolves. I saw technique and professionalism, and I saw the player that I knew at Porto. Now, that's a massive, impact for Liverpool. Pep Lijnders and Jurgen Klopp work closely together. So if Pep's endorsing this player, Klopp's going to listen. He fits the age profile. He has Premier League experience. He's a talented all-action midfielder player, and obviously he comes with that recommendation from Lijnders. Liverpool, remember, have a good relationship with Wolves. Diogo Jota, Keanu Herver deals. They went very smoothly too. Now, breaking down some stats, Neves finds himself in the 81st percentile in non-penalty goals. We're recording this on a Sunday. He had an absolute banger today that I'll get onto. He's in the 82nd percentile in shots per game, something that Liverpool's midfield has lacked at times, like being a direct threat to goal. I mean, Bournemouth aside, obviously, where we saw the likes of Elliott and Carvalho, notching the goals too. Neves, whilst not stereotypically perhaps the most dynamic in terms of progression and speed, he still finds himself quite high up in dribbles completed and progressive passes. He registers in the 82nd percentile for clearances. And actually, when you compare his stats and Declan Rice's stats, who is seen as the future of English football, they're very, very similar in terms of defensive and also attacking capabilities. Now, I'm going to rewind quite slightly, because Neves played as a 6 under Nuno Espirito Santo to protect that back three that he was so famous for. And under Lark, he's played a little bit more of a number 8 role almost, but he still made the same attacking actions, but higher up the pitch. And we see that happen with Liverpool. Like, Liverpool's midfielders and their attackers make defenses, like any defensive action, so interceptions, tackles, etc., quite high up the pitch. So much so that actually he completed the same number of tackles in the final third, 5, as he did in the 2018-19 season. A similar point could be made for his pressing. Doesn't really happen. Wolves are not a pressing team, but they're not renowned for it. However, Nunes still presses quite a lot. Sorry, Neves still presses quite a lot. And that recent change is because obviously he's higher up, so he has that ability to press. So, I can see some people saying that he's not a presser and he doesn't fit in, but Wolves aren't a pressing team, but he's still managing to do that. He's already attempted more dribbles on average than previous season. He's also taken more touches, and this is important for me, in the attacking third per 90 than he's ever done before. And if Liverpool are looking for that dynamic midfielder, that aggressive midfielder, that's important, like those final touches in that final third. Let's look at his defensive stats, because it's really important that Klopp said he wants a 6 and an 8, someone who can play as an 8, but also slot in as a 6. So let's have a look at some of those defensive actions. He averages this season 4 successful tackles per 90, 2 blocks and 2 interceptions. That's 8 defensive actions successfully taken over these past 4 games. His long balls per 90, again, averages about 9, but he won't be aiming for Guedes or Pedro Neto running in behind. He'll have the likes of Nunes, Salah, Diaz. So expect those numbers, those assists to go up too. This is the interesting point. Ruben Neves admitted today following the 1-1 draw against Newcastle, in which he scored a 26-yard screamer, 62 miles an hour. That goal went in at 62 miles an hour to beat Nick Pope. He expected to not be at Wolves this season. Neves told the Times, well, let's see what happens. I tried to focus 100% on my football and I had a good start to the season, but we need results. If you asked me at the end of last season, I would have said to you, I will leave, but I'm still here. So we never know what's going to happen. Now, this contradicts what Bruno Lage said, stating that he's 99% sure Neves will be a Wolves player this season, which obviously conflicts Neves' statements too. So there might be a little bit of cat and mouse involved here. Lage is obviously not going to say, no, don't want Neves. We want to keep him, etc. Neves might be the one to actually say, actually, I want the move too. So there might be a little bit of a game that's going on. He also said, and again, really interesting point, and I quote, one of the things I miss most is the Champions League. It's the best competition in the world to play in. So let's try to achieve that. He also has a massive admiration for Thiago Alcantara, stating that Thiago is one of the best players he's ever played against. In terms of fees, at the start of the summer, when the likes of Arsenal, Manchester United were in for him, he was rumoured to be available for around about 60 to 75 million at the start of the summer, depending on which report you read. So obviously he's probably the most expensive and the most high profile on this list that we've all analysed. But again, key, his wages are currently rumoured to be around £50,000 per week. Again, Liverpool can go and double that, and that is a massive selling point. And that's from multiple reports too. So that's quite reliable. This is it. Again, a key aspect. In the Premier League, Neves registered 216 appearances. He's a commanding midfield presence and, importantly, has a great injury record. He's only missed 4 games for Wolves in the past 5 years. And for Liverpool's injury-prone midfield, that's huge. The best sort of ability at the moment is availability, and that's what Gini Wijnaldum brought to the team. He's a playmaker, a defensive force. He fits Klopp's comments about being a 6 and an 8. And as he showed today, he can hit a ball. He's a set-piece taker. He's a leader. He's progressive. He's a goal scorer. He's versatile. I'm completely sold on this. And it would take a very good argument to get me off the Ruben Neves train. But listen, it's one of those that it might be a pipe dream because it's very late in the window. Liverpool would unexpectedly have to pay like transfer window tax on this, on top of what Wolves perhaps wanted at the start of the season. So I don't know. I think he's perfect. I genuinely do. And you know what? I even said last season, I think he would be perfect for Manchester United. And I said last season, he'd be perfect for Arsenal because that's what they're missing. And right now, that's what Liverpool are missing, this type of player. So it's going to be it's going to be huge. It's going to be huge. I mean, Rigo, what do you think about the Ruben Neves rumors, etc.?
First of all, all his current numbers again have come across a couple of different coaching staffs, and he's been able to fit in and be a leader across those teams. So he's the current captain. I think off that basis alone, it's the kind of character that we seek for our squad. He has a great set of hair. That's plus number 2, and those screamers that he's hitting have come across loaded up defenses focusing on him in a way because the attacking threats aren't in abundance with the Wolves. I think he'd probably be a perfect midfielder for us, just for the simple fact that Nunes is going to command so much attention from those center backs, and you have Salah and Diaz out on the wings. There's going to be a lot of room for him just to ping that ball in, and whether or not he scores those, it's going to create chaos in the box. As you mentioned, as far as his progressive passing, his long distance passing is quite remarkable, right on the money. So I think that'll spring us as far as counters are concerned. and laying the ball across. I think he definitely fits in. The wages also fit into a line within our structure. The big thing is can we get him on an affordable transfer fee? As we mentioned with each other before, the Wolves kind of covered themselves with his exit. They brought in Mateus Nunes earlier in the window, who was a purported Liverpool target, and they've also brought in Boubacar Traore to kind of cover his exit. So I think he's kind of primed for that move. Now it's just a question of, is that who we want as far as leadership is concerned, and whether or not the Wolves are willing to play ball.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those that it seems perhaps too good to be true. I don't know, but we'll have to see, because there's a limited few days left, and it's Jurgen Klopp has essentially put himself out there and said that we want another midfielder, and the Liverpool fan base quite unforgiving at times when it comes to transfers. So if we don't bring somebody in, or somebody who we feel is perhaps at the standard that can impact this squad, I think there might be a few gloomy faces come the end of the transfer window. So they were our midfield, analysis options, and we did do a bit of research around them about how they would fit. We're going to move on to our latest segment, which is the FPL segment. For those of you who do fantasy Premier League, the point of this is that we try to advise you the best that we can, obviously, who you should include for your upcoming fantasy Premier League team. And it can only be one Liverpool player, and it can only be, it can't be repeated. So we all have to choose a different option. Rigo, I think you went first last week. So Alex, you're going to have the opportunity to go first this week. I would also like to say, Alex, you chose Fabio Carvalho last week and he popped up with a goal. So props to you. I chose Mohamed Salah, and in a 9-goal battle, he got nothing. So Alex, you're currently king of the FPL. So who is your recommendation this week for not just Newcastle, because obviously it's a weekly episode. We obviously have Newcastle and Everton. So actually there's 2 games, almost like a double game week, isn't it?
I was just about to say, if you did listen to my advice and picked up Fabio Carvalho for pennies, then you're welcome. But in terms of king of FPL, if you saw me points at the minute, you'd think otherwise. But yeah, it was definitely a good shout. But this week, slightly more obvious, I'm going to go Diaz. He was electric on Saturday. I was lucky enough to be there. He just, when we overload the left side, he's mesmerising to watch. But also after that first pre-season he's had now, the output's coming along thick and fast with it. I thought he had the hat trick on the weekend, so it was an own goal. So 2, not bad at all. Both headers as well. I don't think anyone really has him down as having aerial ability, but in terms of Newcastle, expect maybe a 5-back. Trippier to be pushing right up. They're one of their attacking outlets. He's got a good ball on him, so you'd expect a bit more space. And they're going to cater for the Salah threat, which is now going to become a problem for teams if both of them are getting on the same wavelength. So I'll go for Luis Diaz.
And Luis Diaz was actually Rigo's pick 2 last week, and he popped up obviously with 2 goals, 2 unreal headers, like absolutely phenomenal. So if you followed Rigo's advice too, you would have done well. It's only me, if you followed my advice, you probably don't want to hear my comments, but we'll go over to Rigo.
All right, you took Diaz, so I got to move on to my next target, and this was going to come from the heart as well. He certainly displayed it on the field this Saturday, and that would be Harvey Elliott. I think he's coming into his own in that midfield. The respect that he commands from his teammates is something that you don't typically see from a player of his youth. They all are rooting for him. They all love him on the field, and he's such an unselfish player that the first thing he looks for is to actually open it up for somebody else. So that he capitalized on that Bobby assist, quote unquote, and buried that shot. That was quite terrific, and especially considering, as we found out at post-match that his nan passed away. So it was a quite emotional moment, and I'm sure she was looking down, just absolutely enjoying the display that he made in the first half. and as well as what the team did in thrashing Bournemouth 9-0. So hopefully he can play more extended minutes past the 45. I know they took him out as a precaution. Jurgen stated that if it was a regular match or a match that he was needed, he definitely wouldn't have pulled him out. So I fully expect him to start against Newcastle. And we might have a little bit of good news overall as a team, because Newcastle has a couple of guys out. Bruno's purported not to be playing, and St. Maximum, while he scored an absolute screamer of a shot today to tie the match, he looks like he might be down for Wednesday as well. So things are looking good. Hopefully we build on the momentum against Bournemouth, and hopefully my FPL pick of the week, Harvey Elliott, scores a couple, or at least a couple of assists for you.
Yeah, I think all of our hearts actually went out to Harvey Elliott, because he's supported Liverpool through and through. He's always been a boyhood fan, and to score that goal and to do it in the way he did. I mean, I don't know if you guys watched Firmino after that. He just crossed his arms after that assist and was like, "Yeah, I meant that." And that's the Bobby that we know and love. So yeah, Elliot, great shout. And I hope that his attacking output numbers now start to drive up too. I hope that gives him the confidence. But you feed into my pick actually very nicely there with St. Maximum, who's a phenomenal footballer, looks set to be out. He went off with a hamstring injury. Callum Wilson is also out as well. So it'll be Chris Wood leading the line. And obviously Bruno Guimaraes, who's been phenomenal. That leads me to my pick, which is Trent Alexander-Arnold, because I think Liverpool are keeping a clean sheet. With the attacking threats of those three that I mentioned out, it's heavily reliant upon Chris Wood and Joe Linton. And I just can't see at Anfield that Liverpool, after a 9-0, will perhaps, succumb to conceding a goal. So Trent Alexander-Arnold would be my pick, and the only reason for that, because I could have picked any of the back four if I'm honest, I just think his attacking output is phenomenal. We saw it, absolute banger, 30-yarder. I don't think Klopp was too happy with everyone shouting shoot at the time, but when it went in, I think he was okay, that's fine then. So Trent has great attacking numbers too, and that would be my only differential really between Trent and perhaps Robertson. And listen, Robertson came off and Tsimikas, his replacement, notched up 2 assists. So, and we've said it on the pod for a long time that Tsimikas, if Robertson wasn't there, would be starting every week. So I think, the fact that no one rivals Trent for his competition at right back perhaps makes me swing not just Newcastle, but also Everton. They got Anthony Gordon and not much else. So I think you might be looking at 2 clean sheets over these next 2 game days. Here's the hoping anyway. I was wrong about my last prediction, and hopefully I'm right about this one, so we'll see. But listen, thank you everybody so much for joining us. This has been a wonderful podcast, and it's actually the last podcast we're going to do before the transfer window shuts. And we will obviously be doing, analysing the window as a whole. And hopefully we'll have some great news to bring you that Liverpool have added at least 1 new midfielder. And, we'll see what happens there. But thank you all for joining us. This has been The Room, the podcast brought to you by LFC Transfer Room. I've been Richie, Alex and Rigo. Thank you so much. Take care. And as always, up the Reds.